Hello, this is an assessment for restoration of a Bluthner style 5 grand piano, 175 centimeters long, made in 1925. And that's the crossover point at which the patent action becomes a roller action. And this logo here is normally on the roller action. So I was surprised to find it's actually got a patent action inside. So there's the patent action style with this familiar L-shaped spring here, made up to 1925. Not sure the exact crossover point. If you're in the trade, it would be really interesting to know if you know more accurately. So 1925, 1926, maybe you still get this, but certainly in 1925 we can see one here, and so that would surprise me. Here's a Gretchen Steinberg grand with a normal roller action, as you find typical Renner action, one of the very best action makers in the world. And you can see it's got this capstan here, and you can capstan down there, and you've got this button here which for the set off. Here's the logo we'd expect on a Bluthner patent action up to 1925. So that's the crossover point, is 1925, and this is much more elaborate. So this is normally on a roller style action, so I would have expected this to be roller, and 1925 is the crossover point. So if you're in the trade and know exactly when that happened, well, it's probably sort of merged in, I should think, from my experience. Looking at the key tops, these are one of the best ivories I've ever seen. Very small chip there in terms of having maintained them in good quality. None of them have been come off and slapped back on again. You can see the small line here between the front and the back, which is normal, but the front piece is separate from the back in the older ivory keyed pianos. So that's very encouraging. By the way, exporting ivory, I'm mentioning these days, it's really difficult, and you have to get a certificate to sell ivory as well. We're not selling this piano, we're restoring it for somebody, so that's a bit different. Now the casework generally is in reasonable condition. I think it's probably original, and it has got a bit of crazing underneath. I don't know if you can, well, you can see it's quite marked as well. We can certainly improve the casework. There you can see the crazing quite well here. So underneath there is crazed. So if we were to make this perfect, we'd have to redo it. Either polyester is normal, modern polyester. There's the Gretchen with modern polyester, which is a typical modern piano finish. Or you could do a French polish finish, which is much more time consuming, especially on black, because it shows, and it doesn't look quite so perfect as polyester. You can see slight lines in it. We have done it for clients before. It doesn't really look that much different. I can show you some other video, or if you look on our website, you'll find one or two other videos. We did one recently for a Gretchen Steinberg upright for somebody, and another grand. I can't remember which that was, but we've done that recently. The casework then is generally, we can see defects on it here. So if it was polyester, obviously it would be perfect afterwards. But we can certainly tidy it up and make it good. There's a top lid. At the back of the top lid there again shows signs of having things been put on it. So that can be improved, but the crazing, which you can actually see on this video, I'm quite surprised. On that you can't so well, but there's a similar crazing there. So if we can get it on the reflection there, there's just about, you can see, probably not, but it's not going to be possible to get to put that right without redoing the whole piano. So it could be redone, and that certainly would put the value of the piano up. So worth thinking about while we're restoring it. The client wants the particular problem sorted out on this piano, and also what we can do to improve it, which certain things we can do. This frame finish is very pleasant indeed. It's not quite what it would have been originally, but very pleasantly done. I think this, looking at the colour of the strings, this must have been done in the 1970s or so. I don't think I've got the information from the client as to when that was done, but is very tasteful really, I think, this frame colour. There's the frame colour we normally get done on Bluthners. It's not, the actual matte one on the other one is more like Bluthner's would have been, but not the colour. This is more like the colour, but it's shiny finish. That's personal taste really. This shiny finish looks really nice, and if you do the restringing and then we will have to refinish the casework too. This one is one that, going back to the one that has the original logo on, we've restored this for a client, and that's the kind of finish that we end up with. The strings, we'll look at the strings in a minute. I'll look at the inside in a second. Now if we look at the inside of the piano here, it's generally well done, this work. The bass strings are slightly short. No, I think they're quite a good length actually, and not quite the same as we would do them. I'll show you the other one to compare it with. So here's the one that we've just restored, and you'll see that bass string length is similar, so the strings are good on the other one. They're coned on this one, just a slightly different way of finishing off. Bluthner cone them differently than this, and no string makers do them like Bluthner's do. You've got other examples of the old Bluthner, so you can see what the coning is on Bluthner's, but it's typical Bluthner. You see the tuning pins here are nickel, instead of being the original blued ones. These are blued tuning pins. Now there's a major problem, and that is that some of the tuning pins are a bit loose, even though the piano's been fully restored. There's one, and another one, and one or two of the bass ones at some of the octaves, I think. That one there is flat, and unfortunately the tuning pin is almost maximum size. So because the wrest plank hasn't been replaced, these tuning pins, and you can see someone knock that one in, that one there I'm focusing in on, to knock it and trying to get it tighter, or to try and set the pin, but it won't go any tighter, and it's slightly loose. So because these are maximum size, if you look at my tuning lever on them, especially in the bottom bass here, you can't get they don't supply a bigger tuning pin than that. So unfortunately, the only way of getting around it if they're loose is to replace the wrest plank underneath. You can see this is the original wrest plank because it's black here. Bluthner's would have done it black originally. I think this restorer is actually painted over because you can see some black here as well. But this wrest plank is an original wrest plank. And on the one that we've just restored, you can see the wrest plank here, several layers. Delignate wrest plank are one of the two common ones used, and holds the tuning pins really tight, and with central heating as well. It's multi-layered, so therefore it tends to dry out. Each layer dries out slightly differently, if it does dry out at all, but it's cured, and so it doesn't dry out like the old wrest planks do anyway. Normally old Bluthner wrest planks are pretty sound, but you can see that if you're replacing everything else, you might as well replace the wrest plank if you've got the opportunity. We don't always do that. If the tuning pins are original, then it doesn't necessarily need that, but in the case of the one we've just looked at, it could do with a new delignate wrest plank, and that would solve all our problems. Another aspect to this restoration is that whoever's done it has sprayed over the agraffs here. That's not done by top restorers normally. They are brass underneath, and they can be polished up and look very beautiful. So here's the other one with polished agraffs, and that's normally what's done, and looks a lot better, I think. Now when the tuning pins and wrest plank are replaced, normally the strings are replaced and the soundboard's restored. In this case the soundboard is in good condition, has been restored well, and also the frame is looking very pleasant. So it's not necessary to do any of that, but normally we would do that. Just thinking this through really. So the wrest plank underneath here is going to be replaced. But do we need to replace the strings? Let's listen to them. Well, that one's a bit metallic. It could be improved by turning it possibly. It's quite pleasant. Comparing that with the one that's restored, it is richer, but it's a longer piano too. This is 190 centimeters, that was 175, so the extra string length is going to make a difference. Let's compare some other notes. It's just different. It's very pleasant. Obviously, it's very hard to compare two different pianos. They're both pleasant. very pleasant sound. I think on balance I would restring the piano. You can actually keep the same strings. You can take the tuning pins off and reverse the wrest plank, put the strings back on. We do that on some Bechstein uprights quite regularly if it's been fully restored by somebody and it's just the wrest plank that needs replacing. But in this case, I think I would, these agraffs having been sprayed over, then we've got the question as to whether we respray the frame or not. The soundboard would obviously just make it good if it's slightly dirty here and there, but it doesn't look as though it's got any cracks on it. So that's a decision to make. A look at the action, and the hammers have hardly been used since it's been done, and they're good arbel hammers. They seem to have been voiced well and put on well. Obviously fine voicing is something we can do. Regulation, that spring is fine. There's a bit of regulation to do as I've got on the worksheet. So have a look at the worksheet now. Here's the worksheet. I focused on the main aspects of this piano. There's plenty of Bluthner videos we've got of different assessment for different Bluthner pianos, but we can see here the main things we got here is to replacing the wrest plank and strings. I think it is potentially possible to replace wrest plank without strings. You don't normally break strings when you do that, but we do many upright Bechstein Model 5s. Over the years they've needed new wrest planks. Lubricate the casters and lubricate the balance pins. Reweigh. You can see here that the weighting is slightly on the heavy side. If you want a heavier weight, it doesn't feel too bad really. 53 grams is fine, but it's varied here. We've got 58. So the other one that we've looked at, we've reweighed the keys on that and to 50, 52 grams, 47 to 52 is the kind of range we're aiming for. And the bass, again, it's a little bit heavy. The balance rail needs lubricating. I put that down here, lubricate balance rail, and that means if you pull the key up, it doesn't go down on its own because the balance rail pin needs lubricating, so that will bring the weight down in itself, and then our colleagues will hopefully be able to fine weight the whole piano. The interesting thing, as I mentioned, about the patent style, but that's obviously in the trade we're particularly interested. You may not be interested if you're a member of the public, but this is the crossover time 1925. And ebonized is unusual for the older Bluthners too, so I was fooled by this. I expected it to be a roller action and it wasn't. So that's an assessment of a Bluthner style 5 grand piano, 175 centimeters long and made in 1925. Pleasant piano. But there's a problem with it. You hear that some of the bass strings are out of tune because the tuning pins are loose, and they're maximum size tuning pins, so we don't really have a choice because you can't put bigger ones in. We just have to replace the wrest plank. And the restoration is generally excellent, but there's that aspect to it which unfortunately it often happens that wrest planks need replacing and they're not replaced, particularly on Bechstein uprights before 1902. It's very common that we've had to do those. It's very common that the tuning pins are replaced without the wrest plank being replaced, and even putting longer tuning pins in, thicker ones, the wrest plank doesn't hold. But generally good pianos have good wrest planks. Steinway, Bluthner, Bechstein normally after 1902 you don't have a problem. Of course, if the tuning pins are very large, you have to replace the wrest plank. Such an unsurpassed tone really on the Bluthner ground. I've mentioned this many times before in videos. I've had them in my own house and really appreciate them. The patent action to me isn't a problem. We have top musicians with patent action grand pianos. We can replace patent actions. We've done one recently, and it's actually in our stock list at the moment. But it's not necessary in terms of the feel of the patent action is excellent. We've had other videos explaining that, but I wouldn't do that to this piano unless you really wanted to. info@robertspianos.com. Thank you very much for listening.